I wasn't supposed to question orders. That's the first thing they teach you at the farm, the CIA training facility tucked away in rural Virginia, where they turn college graduates into ghosts. You don't ask why. You don't hesitate. You execute. Clean, quiet, professional. For 7 years, I lived by that code. My name is Daniel Cross, and I was one of the best field operatives the agency had in Europe during the height of the Cold War. I believed in my country. I believed in the mission. I believed that every lie I told, every identity I wore, every life I took was in service of something greater than myself. But in the winter of 1986, in a rain-soaked safe house in Munich, I learned that belief can be the most dangerous weapon of all. Because when you believe in something deeply enough, losing it doesn't just break you, it erases who you were. And standing in front of that German woman with my gun lowered and my hands shaking, I realized I had already been erased. I just hadn't admitted it yet. The rain was relentless that November. I remember that. Munich in late autumn was a city of gray. Gray skies, gray streets, gray faces moving through the fog like shadows uncertain of their own existence. I had been stationed there for 18 months, under the cover of a Canadian businessman importing textiles. My apartment overlooked the Isar River, and at night I would sit by the window, watching the water move in the darkness, wondering if this was what my life had become, a current with no destination, just endless motion toward nothing. The Cold War in 1986 was entering its final, desperate phase, though none of us knew it then. The Berlin Wall still stood. The KGB and CIA still played their silent chess game across Europe. And people like me, we were the pawns that got sacrificed when the board needed clearing. That I grew up in Ohio, small town. 4th of July parades. My father was a steelworker who never missed a shift in 30 years. My mother taught 2nd grade and believed America was the greatest country God ever placed on earth. I joined the Army right out of high school, did 2 tours that I can't talk about, and somewhere along the way, someone noticed I had a talent for languages and a face people trusted. That's when the agency found me. They offered me a different kind of service. I was 23 years old and thought I understood what patriotism meant. I thought it meant sacrifice. I thought it meant doing the hard things so people back home could sleep safely. I wore my oath like armor. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I meant every word. I would have died for those words without hesitation. And eventually, I did. Just not the way I expected. The training was brutal. Not physically, though that part wasn't easy, but psychologically. They break you down until there's nothing left but mission. You learn to lie as naturally as breathing. You learn to kill without emotion. You learn that the person you see in the mirror is just another cover identity, and the real you, whoever that was, it's buried so deep you forget they ever existed. I was good at it. Better than good. By the time they sent me to Munich, I had run operations in Beirut, Prague, and East Berlin. I had recruited assets, extracted defectors, and eliminated threats to national security. I never questioned the targets. I trusted that someone higher up the chain had done the moral calculus and determined these people needed to die. I was just the instrument, the hand that held the gun. And I slept fine at night because I believed in the system. I believed good men were making hard choices. To keep the world from tipping into darkness, the briefing came. Through encrypted cable in October. Short, clinical, pithy. Way death always arrived in our world. Reduced to typed paragraphs on classified paper. Target, Elise Becker. Age 31. BND officer assigned to counter-Soviet operations. Suspected of passing NATO intelligence to KGB handlers. Evidence: encrypted communications intercepted by NSA, unexplained financial deposits, pattern of compromised operations. Authorization: terminal sanction approved. Timeline: immediate. I read it 3 times in the secure room of the Munich station, watching the words blur together under the fluorescent lights. They gave me a photograph. Black and white surveillance shot. A woman walking through what looked like a park, her face turned slightly to the side, dark hair caught by wind. She looked tired. That's what I remember thinking. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. I folded the briefing into my pocket and told the station chief I'd handle it. He nodded, asked no questions. That's how it worked. You got an order. You executed. And everyone involved got to pretend their hands were clean. I spent 2 weeks tracking her patterns. The BND headquarters was in Pullach, just south of Munich, but Elise lived in Schwabing, a neighborhood of narrow streets and old buildings that had somehow survived the war. She walked to work most mornings, stopped at the same cafe for coffee, always ordered it black. She had no husband, no children, no pets. Her file said she was dedicated, brilliant, spoke 5 languages fluently, had been recruited young out of university, and had risen quickly through German intelligence during a time when women in that field were rare. She specialized in Soviet networks, identifying agents, disrupting operations, turning assets. She was good. Maybe too good. That's what made her dangerous. Or that's what they told me. I watched her for days before I ever spoke to her. I learned the rhythm of her life. The way she paused at the corner of Leopoldstrasse before crossing, as if gathering courage for the day ahead. The way she sat alone at outdoor tables, even when it was cold, smoking cigarettes and staring at nothing. She seemed lonely, isolated. I told myself that made sense. Traders are always alone. They sever ties to survive. But something about her didn't fit the profile. She didn't act like someone running. She acted like someone waiting. And that bothered me more than I wanted to admit. The first time we spoke was an accident. Or I made it look like one. I was sitting in her cafe, pretending to read a German newspaper when she walked in. It was raining again, always raining, and she shook the water from her coat with a tired sigh. The cafe was small, crowded, only one empty chair. Mine. She hesitated. I looked up and smiled, gestured to the seat. She sat, ordered her coffee. We didn't speak for 10 minutes. Then she glanced at my newspaper and said in English, "You're holding it upside down." I looked down. She was right. I laughed. A real laugh, not the practiced kind. "Guess I'm still learning," I said. "Canadian?" she asked. I nodded. "Textile business." She smiled faintly. "Terrible cover," she said, and my blood went cold. But then she added, "No one actually reads German financial papers unless they're forced to. You should try something lighter." She slid a magazine across the table. Some glossy thing about cars. "Try this. More believable." Then she took her coffee and left. I sat there for a long time after she was gone, my hands wrapped around a cup that had gone cold. She had made me. Or she suspected. Either way, I should have aborted. Called it in. Let someone else take the shot. But I didn't. Because something in that brief exchange had cracked the armor I wore. She had looked at me like I was a person, not a threat. Like we were 2 tired people sharing a table in the rain. And I realized I hadn't felt seen, actually seen, in years. We crossed paths again 2 days later. Same cafe. This time I had the car magazine. She noticed. Raised her coffee in a small salute. I waved her over. She sat. We talked. Nothing important. The weather. The city. She asked what brought me to Munich. I gave her the cover story. She nodded, didn't press. Asked if I liked Germany. I said I did. Asked her the same. She paused, then said, "It's home. But home can be a prison if you're not careful." I didn't know what she meant. Or maybe I did and didn't want to admit it. We talked for 30 minutes. When she left, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt human. And that terrified me. The 3rd time, I invited her to dinner. I told myself it was operational. I needed to get close. Confirm the intelligence. Find the proof. But that was a lie. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted to sit across from someone and not have to calculate every word, every gesture, every lie. She said yes. We met at a small restaurant near the Marienplatz. She wore a gray coat and a red scarf. I remember that scarf. Simple. Wool, the only color in a city of shadows. We talked for hours. She told me about growing up in Hamburg after the war, about her father who had been a teacher and her mother who had died when she was young. She told me she had wanted to be a pianist but didn't have the talent. I told her about Ohio, about my father and the steel mill, about joining the army because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't tell her the truth, but I told her pieces of it, the parts that still felt real. Somewhere between the second bottle of wine and midnight, she looked at me and said, "You're not a businessman, Daniel." I froze. You move like someone who's always watching the exits. You ask questions like you're gathering intelligence. And you smile like someone who's forgotten how. She wasn't accusing. She was observing. I didn't know what to say. So I told her the truth. Or part of it. I work for my government, I said. Doing things I can't talk about. She nodded slowly. So do I, she said. And just like that, the masks came off. We didn't say more that night. We didn't need to. We both understood what it meant to live in the shadows. To serve something bigger than yourself, until you couldn't remember what you were before the service began. The history of intelligence work during the Cold War is built on people like us. The CIA and the BND had been partners since the early 50s, when West Germany was rebuilt as a bulwark against Soviet expansion. The Bundesnachrichtendienst was formed in 1956, built partly from the remnants of the Gehlen organization, which itself had roots in Nazi military intelligence, a fact everyone preferred not to mention. By the 80s, the BND was one of the most effective services in Europe, focused almost entirely on the East. The KGB, the Stasi, the endless war of information and disinformation. Operations like Able Archer in 1983 had brought the world terrifyingly close to nuclear war because of misread signals and broken trust. The CIA operated over 24 stations across Western Europe, running thousands of assets, intercepting communications, and eliminating threats. The game was played in cafes, hotel rooms, train stations. Anonymous places where people met, exchanged secrets, and disappeared. It was a world built on paranoia and necessity. And it destroyed everyone it touched. Elise and I began seeing each other regularly. We never called it anything. We just met. Sometimes for coffee. Sometimes for walks along the river. We talked about books, music, the small things that make life bearable. We didn't talk about work. That was the unspoken rule. We both knew the walls had ears. We both knew our phones were monitored. We both knew that what we were doing, even just talking, was dangerous. But we kept doing it. Because for the first time in years, I felt like I was living instead of just surviving. She told me once that she had stopped believing in the mission a long time ago. We tell ourselves we're protecting people, she said. But mostly we're just protecting systems, governments, borders, things that don't love us back. I asked her why she stayed. She looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "Because I don't know how to be anything else." I understood that. God help me, I understood it completely. It was during our 5th meeting that I started to question the intelligence. We were sitting on a bench near the Englischer Garten, watching people jog past in the cold. She was smoking, her breath mixing with the cigarette smoke in the frozen air. I asked her, carefully, about her work. She shrugged. Counterintelligence. Mostly tracking Soviet networks. It's boring. A lot of paperwork. I asked if she ever worried about leaks. About moles. She laughed bitterly. Always. Trust is a luxury we can't afford. Then she looked at me. Why do you ask? I hesitated. Then I said, because I've heard things. Rumors that someone in the BND is compromised. Her face didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Daniel, she said quietly, if you've heard that, then someone wants you to hear it. And you need to ask yourself why. That conversation haunted me. I went back to the station and requested the raw intelligence on Elise Becker. It took 3 days to get clearance, When the file finally came through, I sat in the secure room and read it cover to cover. Encrypted communications, sourced from a single NSA intercept, no corroboration. Financial deposits, irregular but explainable through family inheritance documentation I found in German public records. Compromised operations, 4 in total, but each one had at least a dozen people with access. There was no smoking gun. There wasn't even smoke. Just suspicion, inference, the kind of circumstantial web that intelligence agencies weave when they've already decided someone is guilty. I sat there staring at the file and realized what was happening. Elise wasn't the mole. She was the scapegoat. Someone higher up needed a fall guy, and she was convenient. Brilliant, isolated, expendable. I should have walked away. I should have reported my doubts up the chain and let someone else handle it. But I couldn't, because by then I had crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I cared about her, not just operationally, not strategically. I cared about her as a person, as someone who had trusted me enough to let me see her exhaustion, her doubt, her fear. And I knew that if I completed the mission, I would be murdering an innocent woman to cover someone else's sins. The symbol that haunts me most from that time is the red scarf. She wore it almost every time we met. She told me once that her mother had given it to her before she died. "It's the only thing I have left of her," she said. "Everything else got lost in the war." That scarf became a kind of marker for me. Every time I saw it, I was reminded that she was real, that she had a history, a mother, a childhood, that she wasn't just a target in a file. She was a human being who had been shaped by loss and duty, just like me. And every time I thought about putting a bullet in her, I saw that scarf, that splash of red in a gray world. And I couldn't do it. I started to dig, quietly, carefully. I reached out to contacts in signals intelligence. I pulled archived reports from operations Elise had supposedly compromised. I cross-referenced personnel files. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Every operation that had failed had one common thread. They had all been briefed through a senior case officer named Thomas Brennan. He was CIA, stationed in Bonn, with oversight on joint NATO operations. He had the access. He had the motive. And he had the perfect cover, because who suspects the man in charge of finding moles? I pulled his financial records. Offshore accounts. Unexplained wealth. Encrypted communications with a contact in East Berlin. Thomas Brennan was the traitor, and he had set up Elise Becker to take the fall. I drafted a report, documented everything, prepared to send it up the chain. But the night before I planned to transmit, I got a message. Encrypted, urgent, new timeline on Becker operation. Execute within 48 hours. Authorization, Brennan. I sat in my apartment staring at that message and understood. He knew. Somehow, he knew I had figured it out. And he was moving the timeline to force my hand. If I killed Elise, the investigation died with her. If I refused, I became the problem. Either way, he won. I met Elise that night. Told her we needed to talk. She could hear it in my voice. We met at the safe house I kept in the Glockenbach district, a small apartment under a false name that the agency didn't know about. Every good operative keeps a bolt hole, somewhere to run if things go wrong. She arrived just after midnight. I told her everything. About the mission. About Brennan. About the fact that I had been sent to kill her. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just sat down on the old couch and stared at her hands. "I knew something was wrong," she said quietly. "I've been shut out of briefings. My access has been restricted. I thought I was being paranoid." She looked up at me. "Why are you telling me this, Daniel?" I didn't have a good answer. "Because it's wrong," I said. "Because you don't deserve this. And what happens now?" She asked. I didn't know. I told her the truth. If I don't complete the mission, they'll send someone else. Someone who won't hesitate. She nodded. "So I'm dead either way." "Not if you disappear," I said. "I can get you out. Across the border. You have contacts in the East, people who can hide you. She laughed bitterly. You want me to defect? To run to the Soviets? I want you to live, I said. We sat in silence for a long time. The rain hammered against the windows. The city outside was dark and empty. Finally, she said, if I run, they'll come after you. Brennan will know you helped me. They'll call you a traitor. I nodded. I know. Then why? She asked. And I told her the truth. The simplest, most dangerous truth I've ever spoken. Because I can't be the person who kills you. Because somewhere in the last 2 months, I stopped being a spy and started being human again. And I'd rather die human than live as a ghost. The next morning, I reached out to a contact in East Berlin. A KGB officer I had turned years ago who owed me more favors than he could count. I explained the situation. He was skeptical. Why would the CIA burn its own officer to protect a German agent? But he agreed to arrange an extraction. Elise would cross at a remote checkpoint near Hof, where the border was porous and the guards could be bought. From there, she'd be taken to a safe house in Dresden, then further east. A new identity. A new life. She'd be alive. That was all that mattered. But Thomas Brennan was better than I gave him credit for. He had been monitoring me. He had seen the pattern of my movements, the gaps in my reports. And when I used a back channel to contact East Berlin, he flagged it. I didn't know until it was too late. The night we planned to move Elise, I got a call. Station chief. Emergency meeting. I told Elise to wait at the safe house. I'd be back in an hour. I kissed her forehead, the first and only time I ever touched her that way, and walked out into the rain. I made it 2 blocks before I realized what was happening. Black sedans at both ends of the street. Men in overcoats. Not German police. Agency. I ran. Not away from the safe house. Toward it. Because I knew if they had found me, they had found her. I got there before them. Barely. Elise was packing a small bag. I told her we were burned. That they were coming. She looked at me with those tired eyes and said, then we run together. I shook my head. You run. I stay. I'll buy you time. Daniel, listen to me, I said. If they take you, you're dead. If they take me, I'm just a rogue agent. I can stall them, give you a head start. But you have to go now. She hesitated. Then she reached up and unwound the red scarf from her neck. She pressed it into my hands. So you remember, she said. Remember what? That someone loved you enough to try. I heard the footsteps in the stairwell. I pushed her toward the back window. There's a fire escape. Go east. Don't stop. She climbed through. Turned back one last time. I wanted to say something. Something profound. Something that would make sense of what we had become to each other. But all I said was, run. And she did. She disappeared into the darkness and the rain, and I turned to face the door. They came through fast. Professional. 4 men. Tactical gear. Weapons drawn. I stood in the center of the room, with my hands raised, and the red scarf still clutched in my left fist. The lead agent was someone I knew. Carter, good man. Good soldier. He lowered his weapon slightly when he saw me. Cross, he said. Where is she? Gone, I said. You won't find her. Step aside, Daniel. This doesn't have to go bad. It's already bad, I said. You're here to kill an innocent woman because a traitor in Bonn needs a scapegoat. And you're good men following bad orders. So yeah, it's already bad. Carter's face tightened. We have our orders. So did the men at Nuremberg, I said. That got to him. I saw it in his eyes. Don't do this, Daniel. Don't throw your life away for a foreign agent. She's not a traitor, I said. Thomas Brennan is. Check his financials. Check his communications. Check the pattern of compromised operations. It's all there. But you won't. Because he's one of us. And she's not. I could see the doubt now. See him calculating. Even if you're right, he said quietly, it doesn't change the mission. We're here for Becker. Give her up, and we can sort the rest out later. You and I both know there is no later, I said. If I give her up, she's dead, and I become a convenient problem that gets disappeared. So no, I'm not giving her up. I heard the radio chatter. More teams closing in. They had surrounded the block. There was no way out. Not for me, but maybe for her. If I gave her enough time. Carter stepped forward. Last chance, Cross. Tell us where she is. I smiled. It felt strange. Like something breaking. You want to know where she is? I said. She's free. And that's the only thing that matters. Carter raised his weapon. I saw the others do the same. I thought about a lot of things in that moment. My father at the steel mill. My mother teaching second grade. The oath I had taken when I was 23 years old. I had believed in that oath. I had killed for it. I had buried myself for it. And now I was going to die for breaking it. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel like a traitor. I felt like I had finally done something true. Something that wasn't a lie, or a cover, or a mission. I had saved someone. Not because it served my country. Not because it advanced an agenda. But because it was right. And maybe that was the only real thing I had ever done. The shots came from behind me. I didn't understand at first. Then I realized they weren't shooting at me. They were shooting past me. At the window. She had come back. Elise had come back. I turned and saw her framed in the window, halfway through, trying to get back inside. No, I screamed. And I did the only thing I could. I ran toward her, threw myself between her and the guns. I felt the impacts. Chest, shoulder, stomach. They hit like hammers. I went down hard, but I twisted as I fell, shielding her body with mine. We hit the floor together. I heard her screaming my name, felt her hands on my face. Why did you come back? I whispered, blood in my mouth, copper and salt. Because I couldn't leave you, she said, tears streaming. Because you were the only person who ever, Carter was shouting. Radios crackling. Chaos. I could feel myself fading. The room going dark at the edges. I looked up at her. At the woman I had been sent to kill. The woman I had died to protect. Now they'll never find you, I whispered. They'll be looking for me. You'll have time. Go, please. She was sobbing, holding me. I felt her hands shaking. I don't even know you, she said. I don't even know who you really are. Neither do I said. And I meant it. I had spent so many years being someone else that I had forgotten what it meant to be real. But in that moment, bleeding out on a dirty floor in a Munich safe house, I felt real. I felt human. I felt like Daniel Cross, not an agent. Not a cover. Just a man who had made a choice. Your scarf, I said. She pressed it into my hand. I held it tight. That splash of red. The only color in a gray world. Tell me your real name, she said. My name is Daniel, I said. But I never finished. The darkness came, and the last thing I felt was her hand in mine. I died on November 18th, 1986. At approximately 2:47 a.m. in ACI, a safe house operation that was never officially reported. The after-action report, which I've been told about but never saw, listed me as killed in action during an unauthorized operation involving a suspected foreign intelligence officer. There was no funeral, no flag-draped coffin, no ceremony. I was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere outside Langley, my name added to the stars on the wall at headquarters that honor fallen officers. But those stars have no names. Just stars. Because even in death, we're supposed to remain ghosts. My family was told I died in a training accident. They never knew the truth. My father passed away 3 years later. My mother lived another decade, never knowing what really happened to her son. Elise Becker disappeared that night. The search went on for weeks. The agency turned over every stone in Germany looking for her. But she was gone, vanished. There were reports over the years. Unconfirmed sightings in Dresden, Prague, Moscow. Some said she had defected to the KGB. Others said she had gone underground, living under a new identity in the East. A few believed she had been killed and her body never recovered. The truth is, no one knows. The CIA file on Elise Becker remains open to this day. An unsolved puzzle. A ghost who got away. Thomas Brennan was never charged. My investigation disappeared with me. The financial irregularities were quietly buried. He retired with full honors in 1991, just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and lived comfortably in Virginia until his death in 2004. He was given a star on the wall, too. Right next to mine, I imagine. Both of us honored for our service. Both of us traitors in our own way. The difference is, I knew what I was doing. I chose betrayal. He chose expedience. And history doesn't care about the distinction. The Cold War ended 3 years after I died. The Berlin Wall came down. The Soviet Union collapsed. All the secrets we had killed for, all the lies we had told, all the lives we had destroyed, they became footnotes in history books. Irrelevant. The world moved on. But the people we were, the choices we made, the things we sacrificed, those stayed behind. Buried in classified files and unmarked graves and memories that no one talks about anymore. I think about that a lot. What it all meant. Whether any of it mattered. I believed in duty. I believed in service. I believed in sacrifice. And I still do. But I learned something in that safe house in Munich, in those final moments with Elise's hand in mine and her scarf pressed against my chest. I learned that duty without conscience is just obedience. That service without morality is just complicity. That sacrifice without love is just death. And I learned that the most dangerous thing you can do in this world is believe in something so deeply that you forget to question whether it's true. Elise asked me once why I stayed in the life. Why I kept serving. I told her it was because I didn't know how to be anything else. But that was a lie. Or maybe it was true when I said it and stopped being true somewhere along the way. The truth is, I stayed because I was afraid. Afraid of what I would find if I stopped moving long enough to look at myself. Afraid that underneath all the covers and lies and missions, there was nothing left. That I had erased myself so completely that Daniel Cross, the real Daniel Cross, was already dead. And maybe I was. Maybe I died years before that night in Munich. Maybe I died the first time I pulled a trigger on someone I'd been ordered to kill without asking why. Maybe I died the first time I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the face staring back. But if that's true, then what happened in that safe house wasn't death. It was resurrection. For a moment, just one brief, impossible moment, I came back to life. I made a choice that was mine. Not theirs. Not the agency's. Not America's. Mine. I chose to save someone instead of kill them. I chose love over duty. I chose truth over lies. And it cost me everything. But it also gave me everything. Because in that moment, I was finally, truly alive. People think spies die on missions. But the truth is, most of us die long before that. We die the day we stop asking questions. The day we stop feeling. The day we trade our humanity for efficiency and call it patriotism. We die in degrees. In compromises. In the small surrenders we make every day until there's nothing left to surrender. And by the time we realize what we've lost, it's too late. We're already ghosts. I was a ghost for 7 years. I haunted the streets of Europe, wearing faces that weren't mine, speaking words I didn't mean, serving a country that would never know my name. I was good at it. Maybe too good. I convinced myself that what I was doing mattered, that the lies were necessary, that the blood on my hands was justified by some greater calculus I wasn't privileged to understand. And maybe it was. Maybe the world is safer because people like me exist. Because we do the dark work that no one else will do. Because we stand between civilization and chaos and hold the line. I believed that once. I wanted to believe it. Because the alternative was unbearable. The alternative was that I had traded my soul for nothing. That I had become a monster in service of a system that didn't care whether I lived or died, as long as I was useful. But then I met her, Elise, a woman with tired eyes and a red scarf who looked at me like I was human. And everything I had built, all the walls, all the armor, all the lies, started to crack. She didn't save me. I want to be clear about that. This isn't a story about redemption through love. It's simpler than that. And harder. She reminded me that I was still capable of feeling. That somewhere beneath all the training and trauma and duty, there was still a part of me that could look at another person and see them. Not as an asset. Not as a target. Not as a means to an end. But as someone real. Someone who hurt and hoped and tried to survive in a world that made survival almost impossible. And once I saw her that way, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't go back to being the efficient, unquestioning instrument I had been before. Because I started to wonder, if she was real, then what about all the others? All the people I had used and betrayed and killed over the years? What about them? Were they real too? Did they have mothers and red scarves and dreams they had given up? Did they look in the mirror and see ghosts? And if they did, then what did that make me? Not a patriot. Not a hero. Just a man with a gun who had stopped asking questions a long time ago. That's the thing they don't tell you about intelligence work. They train you to see people as vectors, as sources of information or obstacles to be removed. They train you to compartmentalize, to separate emotion from action, to believe that the ends justify the means. And it works. Until it doesn't. Until you meet someone who breaks through the compartments. Until you feel something real in a world built on lies. And then you have to choose. You can go back to being what you were. Or you can step forward into something unknown and terrifying and true. I stepped forward. I chose her over the mission. I chose humanity over duty. And in doing so, I became a traitor. Not to my country. I still believe America is worth serving. I still believe in the ideals I swore to defend. But I became a traitor to the system, to the machinery of intelligence that grinds people into dust and calls it necessary. I became a traitor to the lie that we were the good guys simply because we said we were. Because good guys don't murder innocent people to cover their own sins. Good guys don't turn human beings into disposable assets. Good guys ask questions. And when the answers are wrong, they say no. Saying no cost me my life. But it also gave me my life back. In those final moments, holding her hand and feeling the blood seep out of me, I wasn't a spy. I wasn't a ghost. I was Daniel Cross, a man from Ohio who believed in something enough to die for it. Not for a flag, not for a mission, but for a person. For the simple, radical idea that one life, her life, mattered more than all the systems and secrets and lies we had built around ourselves. And that's not betrayal. That's the only honest thing I ever did. I don't know what happened to her after that night. I want to believe she made it. I want to believe she found safety somewhere in the chaos of the Cold War's final years. I want to believe she took that red scarf and built a new life, far from the shadows and the violence and the endless war. Maybe she did. Maybe she's still out there somewhere, an old woman now, living quietly in some small town, remembering the American spy who died so she could live. Or maybe she didn't make it. Maybe they found her a week later, a month later, and put a bullet in her head in some anonymous alley. I'll never know. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the not knowing is the price you pay for doing the right thing in a world that punishes righteousness. But I hope she lived. God, I hope she lived. Because if she did, then it meant something. My death meant something. It wasn't just another casualty in a war that history forgot. It was a choice. An act of defiance against a system that tried to turn us both into weapons. It was proof that even in the darkest places, even when you've become something you don't recognize, you can still choose to be human. You can still choose love over fear. You can still say no, Dot. They say love can move mountains. But for me, it moved borders. It erased everything I once believed in and left me standing between two worlds, belonging to neither. I wasn't American anymore. I wasn't a spy anymore. I wasn't anything the system could define. I was just a man who had loved someone enough to die for them. And maybe that's the only identity that ever really mattered. If you're listening to this, and I don't know who would be, all these years later, I want you to understand something. I don't regret it. I don't regret meeting her. I don't regret protecting her. I don't regret dying in that safe house with her hand in mine and her scarf pressed against my heart. Because for one brief moment, I was real. I was whole. I was free. And that's more than most ghosts ever get. The world will keep turning. The wars will keep being fought. The spies will keep lying and killing and disappearing into the shadows. The systems will keep grinding people into dust and calling it necessary. And maybe it is necessary. Maybe the world needs people like I was. People willing to do terrible things so others can sleep safely. I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here to tell you what I learned in the end. That duty is important. Service is important. Sacrifice is important. But so is love. So is truth. So is the courage to ask whether the orders you're following are right. Because if you don't ask, if you don't question, if you just obey, then you're not serving something greater than yourself. You're just serving. And there's a difference. I was Daniel Cross. I was a son of Ohio. I was a soldier, a spy, a ghost. I was a lot of things. But in the end, I was just a man who chose love over duty, truth over lies, and humanity over the machine. And I died for that choice. But I died free. I died real. I died knowing that somewhere out there, maybe, a woman with tired eyes and a red scarf got to live because I said no. That's all any of us can hope for. To matter, to be seen, to make one choice that's truly ours. I made mine, and I'd make it again, every single time. Because in the end, the only question that matters is this. When you strip away the titles and the missions and the oaths, when you stand alone in the darkness and look at yourself, can you live with who you are? I couldn't. Not anymore. So I became someone else. Someone better. Someone human. And if that's betrayal, then I'm proud to be a traitor. Now they'll never find her. And I'll never forget her. That red scarf. That splash of color in a gray world. That's what I carried into the darkness. That's what I'm carrying still. Wherever I am now, whatever comes after, I'm holding on to that red scarf. The only thing I had left. The only thing that mattered. Elise Becker. If you're out there, if you survived, if you built a life beyond the shadows, I want you to know it was worth it. Every second, every bullet, every drop of blood, you were worth it. Because you reminded me what it meant to be human. And that's a gift I can never repay. So this is my confession. My truth, my story. I was the American spy ordered to eliminate a German agent. And I chose to die for her instead. Not because she was innocent, though she was. Not because the system was corrupt, though it was. But because in the end, love is the only thing that lasts. The only thing that's real. The only thing worth dying for. They'll call me a traitor. They'll erase my name. They'll bury my story so deep that no one will ever know what really happened in that Munich safe house on a rainy November night in 1986. But I know. And she knows. And maybe that's enough. My name is Daniel Cross. I was a spy. I was a son. I was a soldier. I was a man. And I died for love. Not for country. Not for duty. But for one woman with tired eyes and a red scarf who reminded me what it meant to be alive. And if I could do it all again, I wouldn't change a thing.